Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and sometime co-hosts Miss Purrington and Mookie. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. You can keep up with us on Twitter and Instagram at Comedy Wham or on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, Rochelle Takes on Comedy, and we've also got a festivals page. And of course, we're best known for our events page for live shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW. If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. Tag us on your Instagram stories and posts, and we'll share your show promo. Looking for ways to support all these resources we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Search for Comedy Wham on Patreon and check out our subscriber perks. Hi, Miss Purry. Now let's get back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the podcast project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and we usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. This is a returning guest, and I'm recycling some of my introduction from our first talk in 2019 because I still like these ways of introducing him. He is the bad boy of San Marcos comedy. I will always fondly remember him as Tony Cannoli. He works through so many characters. He may not even remember Tony Cannoli. He founded the Texas State University Comedy Association. He is currently the co-host of Laugh Track and Smart Brain seminars, shows, and he is the host of the wildly fun Explorophoria, which is an experimental comedy show, and he's also here to tell us about some exciting news at Fallout Theater. And now, please welcome back, Comedy Wham Presents our guest, Garrett Buss.
Hello, happy to be here.
Hi, welcome. I saw you giggle when I brought back Tony Cannoli.
Tony Cannoli, and also I forgot that I introduced myself as the bad boy of San Marcos comedy.
Which is so full of irony. As a parent and as a mother, I still am very worried about Tony Cannoli's health.
Oh my gosh!
Because that was quite a spill. This was so inside baseball.
Yeah, for the listeners, I did a character whenever Rob Gagnon had the Final Sandbox comedy show. I did a character called Tony Cannoli, which was an Italian pizza chef. He owned the House of Raviolis. I played the accordion. I had a big bowl of spaghetti. And at the end of my act, I spilled the bowl of spaghetti and slipped on it and landed directly on my tailbone. It was crazy.
And have you recovered?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's good. Because, oddly enough, I know plenty of people that have had tailbone injuries and they never recover.
Oof. Luckily, I don't think I broke it.
Yeah.
I just landed pretty hard on it.
Well, as you know, Garrett, I usually do an icebreaker question.
Sure.
And we'll revisit what yours was last time. Do you remember it?
I do not whatsoever.
It was noodly.
Noodly. Okay.
Do you want to revisit your past work?
I'd love to. Okay. I'd love to.
All right. One word to describe your past.
One word to describe my past. Let's see. I think probably... I mean, Noodly's so good. Noodly is like...
It really captures you.
Absolutely nail on the head. Maybe a kind of different version of Noodly, so maybe more like spaghettified. You know what I mean? Not only did spaghetti play a big role in Tony Cannoli generally, but I think figuring out which specific noodle, because there's so many noodles.
There really are. Yes. Okay, spaghettified. That's definitely a first.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a first. Well, when we last talked to you, you were just kind of settling into the Austin comedy scene after graduating. You had done a fantastic job of landing in the FPIA finals at Cap City. And you're hitting your stride, and then something happened in March of 2020 that affected all of us.
Oh, did something happen in March of 2020? I'm trying to remember. I can't think of anything notable that might have happened in March of 2020.
So between 19 when we talked and 2020, what kind of things were you involved with? And
For sure. Well, obviously, whenever COVID happened and stuff, the first big change, obviously, is that no live shows, right?
Yeah.
So I focused on doing some Zoom comedy shows, and with varying levels of success. I had some Zoom comedy shows.
I remember one fondly.
Was it the Death Drop one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That was our online shows.
That's a big difference between Garrett in 2022 and Garrett in the past. I was much more willing to just injure myself for jokes. I did a Zoom comedy thing where I basically had a helmet, elbow pads, and knee pads, and a timer for 5 minutes. And I was convinced that I was going to, on camera, learn how to do a death drop, right? And I just kept doing it. Every minute that would go by, I would take off an extra piece of padding and take a shot of whiskey. And my girlfriend was so mad because she was in the other room just hearing my limp body land on the hardwood floor for 5 minutes. But yeah. So varying levels of success.
Yeah.
But Zoom comedy shows, they were good, but they were very few and far between. I think I
Yeah.
did maybe a total of like 6 or
Yeah.
something like that over like a year and a half. The main thing that I did, the big change for me, is that I got in contact with a public radio station in San Marcos called KZSM, and we started doing radio comedy, basically. So the first thing I did it was called Roscoe Taylor the Tallahassee Tween, and it was a fully scripted. I would script out these full 45-page radio scripts every single week, and then on Sunday I was burning the candle at both ends.
Wow.
It was this Western cowboy and his talking horse, and they go on these Western comedy adventures. And so got a group of guys together, got a group of people together, and started doing that. Had a lot of fun. Did the first season of that show. And then I was like, this is too much work, because it ended up being, I think, 10 episodes. That's 450 pages over the course of I think 4 months or something. So way too much to keep writing that. So instead, I got a bunch of improvisers together to make another show. We did one that was called Pork Walks at Midnight, which was a noir kind of detective-y improv comedy show. And then eventually we would do Lance Vibrato, Astronaut Attorney, which is a space lawyer that has different lawsuits where he has to defend different aliens across space. So I love all of the shows equally. The Roscoe shows I love so much because it was the first show and it was getting everybody together and figuring how to do radio comedy.
Yeah.
But the improv shows are so much easier because you just get people together, figure out what your episode prompt's going to be, and just start running with it. So that was mainly my main way of still doing comedy throughout 2020 and 2021 is going down to the radio station, recording these, putting them up as podcasts and that kind of stuff. Now, since shows are coming back and stuff, I have begun Exploraphoria again, formerly Exploratorium. We received a cease and desist letter over 2020 from a museum in San Francisco that had the name Exploratorium. Wow. And I was like, oh, man. So changed it to Exploraphoria. And so, I mean, at this point, Exploraphoria rolls off the tongue. But there were 3 months, 4 months where I kept saying Explore. They're just so close together.
Right.
But so now I've been doing that show. And in the interim of 2020, 2021, a lot of holes have opened up in Fallout's schedule, Fallout comedy.
Yeah.
So Tuesdays specifically were free game. There's not a lot of people that wanted to do Tuesday shows because especially whenever we were coming back from the pandemic, people would come out on a Friday or a Saturday, but Tuesdays were very sparse. Not a lot of people wanted to come out at Tuesday at 9:30. So I had Exploraphoria the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday, and then I kind of talked to the head of Fallout development, and I was like, hey, could we get some other shows going on in here? So the second Tuesday, I ended up getting a deal with Max Foster, Lexi Morris to do Smart Brain seminars, which is comedy TED Talks, PowerPoints. We have comedians present PowerPoints about different things. And then the last Tuesday of the month, we do Laugh Tracks, which is comedians running on treadmills, doing their stand-up, and every 3 minutes we bump it up a mile an hour.
Oh,
so
Jesus Christ.
Eventually they get to be sprinting at 7 miles an hour. So it's pretty good. No one's hurt themselves yet,
That's
which is
amazing.
That is a blessing.
Yeah.
But I mean, down at Fallout, they're starting to call me Mr. Tuesdays. So That's the new nickname I'm gotten. I am formerly the bad boy of San Marcos comedy. Now, Mr. Tuesdays.
I think we've got our episode title.
But yeah, things are going great at Fallout. I'm so happy that I can do live comedy, and I'm weirdly thankful that because of the forced kind of isolation of COVID and all that stuff, that I got into radio and I got into podcasting and stuff like that.
Is that something that you're continuing on the side, or are you way too busy now? Okay.
Well, it's kind of a bit of both. So I was pretty busy. We wrapped up season 2 of Lance Vibrato, Astronaut Attorney a couple of months ago, but we're bringing it back specifically with Fallout. And so the past couple of months, I've been working with Carlos Larota, fantastic. Carlos Larota, love him so much. Specifically turning the Dank Room, which is the farthest corner in Fallout, that's next to the prop room. It's this like little tucked away area going completely unused, basically. There was some like old sound equipment laying around and like spillover props and costumes, and there was a bathroom in there, but it was completely unused, basically. And I've moved from San Marcos to Austin in the interim years, and I was like, I wish I didn't have to drive 40 minutes to the radio station in San Marcos every week I want to do this podcast.
Yeah.
So I talked to Carlos, talked to Fallout, and over the past like 5 months, 6 months, we've just been renovating that room and turning it into like a fully fleshed podcast studio.
Wow, that's big.
Thank you. It's taken a long time.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I was like, how hard could it be? Just get a microphone, right? But yeah, so we repainted the whole room, laid down carpets, bought a couch, bought a table, bought a bunch of chairs, got all the foam on the walls, microphones, all that kind of stuff. So my first time doing a big project like this that also has like oversight. You know what I mean? Because the theater's not mine. Like the theater's owned by people that need to pay rent and take care of facilities and stuff. So a whole lot of this past couple months have been like the logistics, getting everything kind of like set up for the podcast room. But now, I guess to answer your earlier question, I'm excited to bring back the shows to continue doing these comedy radio shows in Fallout.
Yeah, and opening the door for others to do some podcasting.
Absolutely.
There. What is, because I am a podcaster, I am very curious about this idea, and I love this idea because I would imagine it's a great way to encourage more creativity and to hopefully make some money to help offset all of the costs of being in a space downtown Austin. So are you going to be the inaugural podcast or show of Fallout? So basically an interesting, because like I said, I thought this was all kind of very hypothetical at first. I was like, we'll just put, because it's a, for people who don't know, Fallout is like a fallout shelter. So it's already underground. So that really helps with sound dampening. Like the old radio station that we were recorded at was next to a fire station. Oh gosh. So
very often we would be recording, like a space lawyer show and then have to all be silent as a fire truck runs by. So this is underground. It's also the furthest room from the theater, from the actual place where people would be doing comedy and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really good. It cancels out the noise already because it's all concrete walls basically. Yeah. And so I thought it was going to be a lot simpler to get everything ready, but a thing that I didn't consider was like the logistics of a theater. Like I said, they are in a position to make money. They want to specifically make sure that they have the rent money to continue to provide stuff. Right. So I fell in kind of a in between because I wanted the podcast room to be like a resource for the community. So many comedians in Austin have podcasts. There's so many podcasts, and a lot of people record the podcasts at home or on Zoom, right?
Right.
And that's very convenient and free. Like you own all of your own equipment. You have your computer with Zoom set up on it. So whatever the idea with the podcast room, it had to be more appetizing than what people already have and have set up over 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to charge a ton of money, because if we were like, hey, we have a podcast room, but it's going to be $50 for an hour of podcast, I don't think anybody would want to do that realistically because, they already have their own setups. They're already kind of doing stuff. So the middle ground that we fell with the theater is basically if you would like to have a tech, me or any of the other audio techs working at Fallout, if you would like a tech to be in the room with you to run the soundboards, set up the microphone equipment, you would be paying them for their time, right? And so I think the rate that we have now for one show is $25 to make it worth that tech to drive up to Austin, park, and hang out there running all the mic stuff for an hour, basically. But if you would like to do it for free, we'll have seminars. You can basically contact Fallout, and we will have a day where I or another tech will train anyone you want to run the soundboards, and then it's completely free. Then the equipment's just there. We'll give you the code for the lockbox to take out the soundboard and the mics and stuff. But I wanted it to be in a middle ground, you know what I mean? Where the theater can still make money, and the people that are actually doing the work to run the soundboards would be making money.
Right.
But if you already have a little bit of, audio bona fides and you're like, I would like to record my podcast completely for free, then there's also an option for that. You can get training, learn how the soundboard works, learn how the microphone works, and then be able to do it without cost. So a lot of this is like I said, I'm used to college, post-college, very flashy, simple, I'll set up a comedy show and I'll do a comedy show. But this has been a lot of logistics, a lot of planning and figuring out and all that kind of stuff. Super excited about it.
So are you the podcasting officer in charge?
Oh yeah, I'm the podcasting officer.
Did you earn that title?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Fallout, is near and dear to my heart. When it was becoming the Fallout Theater and there was the big fundraiser, we threw in a couple of pennies and got our names on the wall. So that's, I love Fallout and I love hearing new uses of space.
Absolutely.
And, the creative types of shows that Fallout brings to the Austin community. You are so creative between these different shows that you've created and this podcast / radio show concepts. I always want to know, how does that brain of yours work to always be coming up with these creative concepts?
That's very sweet of you. It's very, very sweet of you. For me, it was kind of like a necessity thing. So it was, first off, I can't do live shows, so what can I do?
Yeah.
There's this radio station, I'd like to do comedy there. And then I had such a good time doing comedy there, and then I eventually moved into Austin, and I was like, now it's a newest necessity. How do I shorten the gap of my commute? 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. Especially, we would record Sundays at 9 p.m., so being on I-35, at 10:45 p.m. stinks on a Sunday night, right? So the necessity of how do I make this closer? How do I make this work more? And then realizing that there's this space that's going completely unused at Fallout, and then just kind of getting everything rolling on Fallout. So just necessity. Just how can I do comedy with this stuff that's kind of in front of me?
I'm going to rephrase necessity to you need it to be happy and thrive as a human being.
Absolutely.
'Cause I can't imagine a world where Garrett Buss is not doing something creative.
That's the best part about being a comedian is that there's no way to fail at being a comedian. You know what I mean? The only way to fail at being a comedian is just to fully stop doing comedy.
Yeah.
But even if you do comedy that's not the best. I've done tons of terrible stand-up. But as long as you keep doing it, you're going to improve. Everybody improves, you know?
Since you have run Explore for you now for, combined total 3 years
started
now?
started in the summer of 2019, and then had a hiatus
Right.
for the all of 2020, and then I think about half of 2021.
Yeah. What's one thing that you've done with Explore for you that you comes to mind as your favorite thing that you've done?
Oh, of course. I think a big thing that's happened since, I made the Club Comedy Association back in San Marcos, and that's just a ton of incredibly funny individuals at that college that just do improv and stand-up and sketch and stuff. And I graduated in 2019, And I'm very happy to report that since then, the club is just functioning and completely running there with new members and new stuff that they're all doing by themselves, which is like, I love seeing it work. I was very worried that I was going to...
Legacy.
Exactly. But so whenever I first came to Austin, you know, I was fresh, new, excited to take the mantle of Sandbox and turn it into my own thing or whatever. And so it was a lot more of a hectic schedule. I was always reaching out, having people reach out to me. I never really knew what the final group of people that were going to be on the show were until like the day that we were doing the show, essentially. And I mean, I loved it. I had so much fun, but it was a lot more like reaching out to everybody in Austin and seeing who wants to be on the show, what people have ideas and stuff. And now it's been enough time that people have like gone through the 4 years at Comedy Association in Texas State and have now moved to Austin and are now new comedians. And so I've seen multiple groups. Like there's an improv group called Pronounce Zed that I love so much. And they're all alumni from Comedy Association. And then there's another group, some alumni, some still active members of Comedy Association, called Tempo Tantrums. And they're like musical improv. They like have a piano and they'll make a whole like little improvised musical. And so now I've had them come on to Explorophoria, and it's great. It's fantastic. And so that's the biggest change with Explorophoria is it used to just be me by myself, and I was booking all of these people. And now I'm able to get other people from this community, from Comedy Association, and also generally, obviously, still from Austin. Yeah. But it's very exciting to see them like blossom, grow up as adults, and like be kind of out in the comedy world.
Yeah. One thing that I've been trying my best to interview people that are new to the Austin comedy scene.
Absolutely.
And part of I've now taken it upon myself to share some history about the Austin comedy scene.
Nice.
So this is why we have LaShonda here
I love the candle.
with us. And one of the things recently that came up is somebody said, I didn't realize how experimental the Austin comedy scene was before. Like, you know, what they came into was a very Brogan attitude, and this is just the word that I'm now trying to it's a shorthand.
No, it makes perfect sense.
You know, the type of comedy that I think people thought was the Austin comedy scene.
Yeah.
Because Fallout was closed, Cold Town had its doors
shut their
closed.
doors, yeah.
So the spaces that provided us with the experimental comedy experience were gone. And now that they're back, people are like, oh, I'm learning that Austin was like super experimental before.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. That's
Yeah.
what you want from a thriving comedy scene.
Absolutely.
Is a little bit of everything.
Variety.
And now there's a lot of, you know, a certain type of comedy
certainly.
Austin. And as if you have gotten to know some of the people that have, you know, moved into Austin to do different types of comedy, how have you tapped into some of those people? That sounded so judgmental, but some of those new faces
certainly.
To Austin comedy to like get a flavor for how cool and fun experimental comedy can be.
Absolutely. I've reached out to a ton of new comedians specifically so I don't think I've even explained the premise of Explorophoria.
No, we really haven't.
I've just talked about it like it's this understood thing. So Explorophoria, formerly Exploratorium, formerly Sandbox, was a show originally started by Rob Gagnon, which was basically the simple premise is experimental comedy. Do stuff at this show that you would not have a place necessarily to do in other places, right? So the big key there is no typical stand-up. You know what I mean? You're not just going to go up, do 5 minutes, have a set, and leave. It's specifically a place for people to, you know, do songs that you want to do, or do a dance routine, or do a front flip, or have a bunch of costumes and props, or do a musical improv. Just literally anything. Yeah. I will never say no. I will let anybody on the show. It's a completely like free to fail, good show where you can just try out anything that you want to do. So with that being said, I have reached out to people doing shows at like Creek in the Cave, for instance, doing shows like all around Austin, and let them know like, hey, this is a place to do weird, strange stuff. And I love doing that. I love doing that so much. I have had a couple of instances where I've had to specifically, somebody's been, you know, expressed interest being on Explorophoria, gotten ready to do the show, and then last minute I recognize, oh, this person is intending on doing typical stand-up. We need to like, we gotta kind of last minute especially as a stand-up, you don't want a lot of last-minute changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of having direct it. Like maybe they just do storytelling for the time that they're on, or maybe they just specifically do crowd work the time that they're on. So it's interesting because usually it's so easy to find people that want to do strange experimental stuff, but especially right when we were starting back in 2021, I feel like while people definitely did want to do experimental comedy, there wasn't, I don't know how to explain it properly. There wasn't the exact same amount of like the ratio, I guess. In 2021, when I first started doing Explorophoria again, there was a large ratio of people. The people that had still been active in the comedy community were primarily specifically doing stand-up.
Yeah.
Because, like you mentioned, Cold Town was shut down, Fallout was shut down for quite a while. It feels like a lot of people weren't flexing the muscle.
Right.
So the first couple of months of Explorophoria was getting a lot of traditional stand-up comedians and trying to find a way to make that work differently, like I said, with storytelling or crowd work or something. And now in 2022, I have no issue finding tons of, especially improv groups. That's another thing, is that this year has been the year of improv groups. I've had a ton of different variety, like Sloppy Seconds are incredible. Like I mentioned, Pronounced Zed we have on all the time. Tempo Tantrums, all these different improv groups that have different flavors. Like Pronounced Zed does a lot of challenge improv. So for instance, they'll have one improviser has muting headphones on, one improviser is blind. They'll do an improv scene with different senses taken away, or they've done improv with a taser before, which I should not mention because I'm sure that's some kind of a hazard for the theater. So for all intents and purposes, this is a joke. This didn't ever happen, but they do a lot of fun like challenge stuff. So it's been great discovering more than I feel like in 2019. It was mainly stand-ups and then sketch comedians. I had a lot of sketches come on to Explorophoria, and now I have a healthy amount of sketches, but like especially a lot of improv, especially a lot of stand-up. So it just changes all the time, constantly.
Well, that's great that now the new faces in the Austin comedy scene know that there's a place for them to try to do something different.
Absolutely.
I think this was still under the Sandbox days, but I still remember Joey Z did, I think it was All About Lamps.
Yeah.
And that was before his Glow show. That was before all of his experimental, wild, crazy stuff. And I'm like, that was the germ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rob started, that now you're cultivating, and it's just very, very cool to see that happen.
Yeah.
The Smart Brain Seminar is such a great idea. I remember, this was years ago, Mac Blake and Brett Vervoort did some kind of like business seminar convention thing, and it was at Spider House. And I love that concept so much, trying to just poke so much fun at the professional presentation.
100%.
And I love that there's now, a regular version of that happening.
Thank you.
So what's the funnest thing you've seen with your Smart Brain Seminar?
Oh, that's a great question. So with Smart Brain Seminar, it kind of came out of, again, kind of like necessity, because we had so many PowerPoints on Explorophoria to the point that I was like, I was like, well, we can't keep, essentially, if we have a bunch of PowerPoints, then it's no longer as experimental than if it's like just a couple of PowerPoints. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And me, Maxim Foster, and Lexi were originally coming up with a pitch for a show for Creek in the Cave. And we were just trying to think of, Colton Dowling basically reached out and said, Garrett, come up, we need more experimental stuff here. Come up with anything, whatever show you want to do, we'll do it, right? So I'm reaching out to Lexi, I'm reaching out to Max, we're figuring out pitches. And at one point, the pitch was a Judge Judy style comedy show where the defendants would come to the stand and do comedy, and it would be like a I don't know, we didn't end up doing that. We ended up totally changing it and like throwing the idea around a whole bunch until eventually we landed on TED Talks, and we were like, okay, TED Talks, there's tons of TED Talks happening in Austin. Like generally you'll see just flyers for like a TED Talk happening somewhere. And this gave us a very easy way to like, everybody knows how to make a PowerPoint. Everybody's had to make a PowerPoint at some point.
Yeah.
And so it's a very fun shorthand, like a visual shorthand for stand-up comedians or any kind of comedian to like kind of present. And so we set up Smart Brain Seminars as like originally it was called Smooth Brain Seminars, but then we decided we want it to be positive, Smart Brain Seminars. But so I think probably it's so tough to choose a favorite. I think my favorite's probably Sam McCarthy, very funny improv comedian. He's done a series of PowerPoints, but one that he specifically did was he was playing this character that's this like deranged conspiracy theorist guy that's obsessed with the idea that there is like a doppelganger of him somewhere doing things essentially, and like living his life and looking exactly like him and like messing up his life or whatever. And so as Sam is presenting this PowerPoint, he's like telling you to look, here are the signs you should look out for a doppelganger in case they're like, taking your identity and stuff. But as he's doing the PowerPoint, you start to recognize that the PowerPoint has now been written by the doppelganger. And so the doppelganger has like taken pictures of him in bed and is like wearing his clothes and stuff, but it's him.
Oh my gosh.
And so he's just very, very funny. Yeah. So I think Sam McCarthy's very funny flavor of Smart Brain Seminars, because we have two different like categories. Some of them are presenting as a TED Talk, straight-laced, I'm a serious thinker of the world, and here's my innovation. Or we have goofy comedians being like, hey, here's a goofy thing. And like Sam McCarthy is one of the people that have had like horror, like this like kind of dread dipped into his comedy PowerPoints. And so, yeah, I think that's a notable one that comes to mind.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. And as if that was not enough, then we have Laugh Track.
I love Laugh Track.
I remember when Gabe launched this in St. Marcus, and to myself, I thought, that is the most insane and ridiculous idea. And then here we are, like 5 years later. I don't know when he originally did that.
He did it in 2019 is whenever he started doing.
Yeah.
So originally Gabe Cortez, fantastic comedian, also one of the bad boys of San Marcos comedy. We had a place called, it still exists, Wake the Dead Coffee House. It's this nice coffee house in San Marcos, fantastic place. They have open mics every Tuesday. And Gabe started a show when we were in college called Puns of Steel. And basically, my mom had this old treadmill. And so I got the treadmill, packed it into my car, drove it to San Marcos, and we set it up at Wake the Dead. And it's the same exact premise. You have comedians on. Every couple of minutes, you bump it up like a mile an hour. They're running. Whoever runs the longest and has the longest set wins, right? Huh. And so Gabe set up the show. I got the treadmill. And then I won the first show. And it all went straight to my head. My ego inflated. I was like, this is the best idea. This is the best comedy show that's ever existed. And so Gabe ran it for a couple more months. And then eventually, unfortunately, the treadmill was no longer we've had an issue with treadmills because it's an interesting thing. The treadmills that we can afford are not necessarily the treadmills that work so perfectly well. And so we have a new treadmill now, and we have brought it to Fallout, and now instead of Puns of Steel just hosted by Gabe, it is now Laugh Tracks hosted by me and Gabe. And it was like the third little puzzle piece to fill up every single Tuesday to have a comedy show on every Tuesday. And I was thinking about we've already represented the mind. Now let's represent the body. You know what I mean? And so Gabe and I, for like $100 on Facebook Marketplace, bought a defunct Gold's Gym treadmill. Or I decommissioned, I should say, because it is janky. It shakes a lot. It gets really hot. Whenever it gets really hot, it starts to smell a specific way. Gosh. And you can't hold on to the handlebars whenever you're going at 7 miles an hour because it will just jostle. So a new thing we have to do that we didn't have to do back whenever it was Puns of Steel is when we bring the comedians on pre-show and we're like, hey, just get on the treadmill, test it out, get comfortable with it so that when this thing starts to rattle and shake, you don't get concerned. So we've been doing it for a while. It's a great show. I love it so much. It's a very quick way to get past, I don't know, it gets past some of the nerves that comedians might have or nerves that the audience might have because when you're running, especially if you're running at like 7 miles an hour, telling your jokes, you're so vulnerable. You cannot keep up any illusion of a separation between you and the audience. Like your timing is completely thrown out the window because you're like trying to like say your jokes in between breaths. Like
trying not to fall and die.
You're trying not to fall and die. It's just so funny. And it's also, it makes anything that you're saying is instantly funnier if you're running at 7 miles an hour, like anything. And so it's like such a high energy show. It's so funny. It's like a nice thing to like, we have a timer for like every 3 minutes. Gabe or I, alternating, will come out of the shadows and bump it up a mile an hour. And like, we started at 1 mile an hour, and that's just walking. That's just normally walking. Yeah. And then 2 is kind of a little bit fast walking, and then 3, at 3 you're starting to like actually jog. Uh-huh. From 3 to 7. 7 is the cap because we've done it at 10 miles an hour, and it is not. Someone would break an ankle if we did it at 10. So we cap it off at 7 miles an hour. And between 3 and 7, every time we show up, the comedians are just filled with dread. They're like, please, no, please.
The audience loves it.
The audience loves it. It's so fun. So Laugh Tracks is incredible, and it was like the last piece of the puzzle to like have all of the Tuesdays shows filled up.
I'm curious, and I know that you as a stand-up performer are super physical, lots of movement. So have there been comics that are similarly like super high movement on a stage when you see them do traditional stand-up that have just had the craziest experience by being confined and being forced to walk, run?
Absolutely. So many, I mean, I've seen Ron Leckler do Laugh Tracks. Uh-huh. He can be very physical. He also is a very, very tall man. Yeah. And so Ron Leckler on Laugh Tracks has been hilarious. Literally, the best part about Laugh Tracks is that with Explorophoria, we are completely free to fail, right? If you have if your thing doesn't go quite as well as you'd like it to, that's okay. I'll have you on the next show. Like, it can always improve. There's no wrong answers at Explorophoria. And then with Smart Brain Seminars, it's a whole presentation you're showing through. So sometimes some presentations hit a little bit bigger than some other ones do, right? With Laugh Tracks, it's literally always funny. No one has ever bombed at Laugh Tracks. It's because even if the jokes aren't perfect, the performance of you running and like different comedians have done it different ways. Andrew Wagner did a bit where he starts wearing a t-shirt and I think shorts. And as he's running on the treadmill, he's like, oh man, it's getting cold in here. And he puts on like a hoodie. And he's like, oh man, it's still so cold. And then he puts on like pants. And then he puts on like a big, huge jacket. And then like a scarf. And then like a winter jacket on. And so he just keeps progressively getting covered in huge clothes. And we've had the exact opposite. We've had a comedian start on with a ton of clothes and she'd be like, oh my gosh, and ripping it off to reveal like a little bikini top or something. Like, so a lot of comedians being very goofy and silly. And I think that the like you said, the constraint of the treadmill really lets people, like, I don't know, mess around with all of their comedy. Yeah. And we have yet to have either an injury, which I'm always afraid of. Every single time we do it, I'm always like, don't be the one. Don't be the one. So we haven't had an injury on the show, and we also haven't had anybody do poorly on the show. The show always like goes really well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. Okay, so people need to plan their Tuesday nights around...
That's right.
A full evening at
Tuesday at 9:30. Every single Tuesday at 9:30. I'm doing some kind of comedy show at Fallout.
Okay. Well, Garrett, let's take a little intermission, pause break to do our Where Should We Begin card game questions.
Absolutely.
You're going to pick a question from the 2 cards there, and I will ask you, and we'll see how good of an improviser you really are.
Sounds great to me.
All right. Which one?
I'm going to go with this one.
All right. Ooh. This is going to be hard for you to answer, I would imagine. You're such a positive person. A friendship I need to end.
Whoa. Wow. I got one. Maybe it's a joke answer.
Gabe?
Maybe it's... No. Maybe it's a joke answer. But I have a very toxic friendship with my cat, Fartgoof Jr. I have a nasty little man. He's a little tuxedo cat. He was a stray cat that showed up 3 years ago in my parking lot. And he was like rail thin, but had like really, low hanging belly kind of cat. So I could tell he was like domestic before and was a big boy, but had been on the streets for a while and now like skin and bones. And so I immediately fed him every time he whined, and he just got blimp size. The problem is that I've only been a dog guy up until now, and so I didn't realize how like manipulative cats can be.
Oh, absolutely.
The eye contact. Oh, the constant baby eye contact that this dude gives me. And so especially whenever my significant other, she was off, she was out of the country, she was in Italy for a while, and it was just me and him, and he would be like, I want treats, Garrett, and I'd be like, dude, the treats only cost like $4 for a bag of 100. Yeah, you're getting treats, dude. Yeah, just keep asking, I'll keep giving you. And so he has become a little angry tyrant now. So now he used to be, maybe he wasn't, maybe this was just me not knowing his personality, but I used to think he was thankful for like being off the streets and having a safe home. Not anymore, man.
Yeah.
He's a nasty little dude. He's just he's so funny and very cute, but like absolutely he needs to get his ego in check.
Yeah.
So I think if there's any friendship that is toxic that I need to end, it's that relationship with Farkif Jr. because he doesn't treat me with respect. Okay.
I get it.
He just takes it all.
Well, and since you grew up as a dog person, you know that, I am a cat person. So this is my generalization.
Certainly.
With dogs and humans, the human is the commander. They're the alpha.
Truly.
And the dog respects the human. With cats,
no way.
Flip
Other
that
way
on its
around,
head.
man.
Oh, yeah.
Also, it's so frustrating because it's like with dogs, obviously you can train them. They're very intelligent in different ways, dogs and cats.
Yeah.
And like with my cat, he'll like just throw up on my shoes. And I'll be like, I cannot punish you in any way that matters. I cannot convince you if I I don't know. I literally can't do anything to make him understand that what he's doing has upset me.
Yeah.
So I just have to be like, okay, that happened. All right. He's just looking at me blankly. Maybe it happened 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Complete separation of like cause and effect.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. I did not know there was this dark side to you, Garrett.
Truly.
All right. Well, let's see what mine is.
Okay. The person who challenges me the most.
Oh, this is an easy one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, my upstairs neighbor, a.k.a. my son.
That makes sense.
That's
that makes
so
sense.
easy. Oh, especially as a teenager.
I can
My gosh.
imagine.
And
I can imagine.
I am like, knock on wood everywhere. I've got a good kid. I've got an incredibly good kid.
Travis is great.
It's still a challenge.
I can imagine. I can absolutely imagine.
Last night we had dinner, and the reason that we have an oven in the middle of the living room, as you saw, it's not truly an art piece installation, is we had to buy a brand new oven right before Thanksgiving.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, we have a refrigerator full of leftovers. We're going to have leftovers. And he did not like that. And I'm like, sorry.
It is what it is.
We're having leftovers.
R.I.P. for the oven, man. That's a tough time to go.
Oh, man, it was. But we tested it out, the new one this morning, and knock on wood, we're ready for Thanksgiving.
Congratulations. It's very exciting.
Garrett, I want to revisit something from back with our last interview. You had made it to the finals of the FPIA, and I think in 2019, because that was the last one that we had. And then Cap City, we lost Cap City completely until it was bought by Helium. Did you give it a shot this year?
I did not give it a shot this year because I was still living in San Marcos whenever the applications were going through. Basically, it's very funny because I had very starry eyes whenever I graduated college. I was like, I'm going to leave. I mean, I love San Marcos so much. It's a great place. 78666 represent. But Austin was the big shining jewel, right? So I was like, I'm going to move to Austin as soon as I graduate. And I did. I moved to an apartment in South Austin and started doing Exploratory and stuff. And I graduated in May of 2019. So I had a good half a year basically to kind of, be officially an Austin comedian, which was nice. And then once lockdown happened, I was I had a job. I was working at Favor, and I was also doing Dinner Detective and stuff like that. Things that did not necessitate living specifically in Austin.
Yeah.
It's not like I had a job that was like one big commute that I had to go there every single day that was in Austin or anything. And so I don't know if you know this, but sometimes Austin can be expensive.
I was just thinking, I wonder if he might have moved out because of the housing prices.
Yeah, absolutely. It was expensive, and also I had specifically moved to Austin to do comedy,
Yeah.
and now suddenly
No comedy.
it was 2020 and I had no comedy to do. So
Yeah.
I started doing stuff at the radio station in San Marcos as well, and I was like, okay, so currently logistically the only thing that's like calling my name is back in San Marcos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And San Marcos is a pretty cheap place to live. So I moved in with my girlfriend and a couple of roommates, and we lived in an apartment in San Marcos for 2 years, starting in 2020 and then ending in like earlier this year. I moved this summer.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately for FPIA this year, I was not in Austin. I was coming to Austin certainly to do, I mean, I also work at Fallout and stuff, but didn't have a zip code.
It's one of their criteria.
That's how it is. But I'm in Austin now officially.
Yeah. Okay. So next year, do you think you'll give it a run?
Of course I'll
Yeah.
sign up for FPIA. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. It was a very interesting contest to watch. I got to see a handful of prelim rounds,
Nice.
some semis, and of course the finals. And it was it was a mix of old and new. And I was glad that some of the classic, not old, the classic Austin comics, did so well in that top three. So, and some of the new faces, they were like showing promise that next year they fare just as well.
I gotta say, that's like the best surprise of 2022 is, I don't know, I got kind of a little down in the dumps about gloom and doom in 2020, as I think many other people did.
Sure.
But specifically seeing Austin's incredible comedy scene just be kind of stripped away. I mean, Cap City closed, Cold Town closed, Fallout was closed for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so, like, seeing all of these theaters that I specifically moved here to perform at shut their doors was, like, the worst, right?
Yeah.
It really stunk. But now there's a new Cap City. There's a new Cold Town. Fallout is open.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there are also new comedy clubs that have sprung up in the interim. So I think the best part about this year generally is just seeing everybody open their doors again. Like, that's really exciting because I kind of just assumed it was permanent. I was like, well, there goes Cap City. Like, I didn't expect it to really come back. And then whenever we did get the news, it was kind of mired in controversy, or is it going to happen this year? Is it going to happen next year?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of stuff like that. And the same thing with Cold Town moving around to different locations and stuff. It all seemed very not permanent.
Right.
And so I'm super excited to see that, like, the doors are open again.
Yeah. And it's exciting to see what the Austin comedy scene is in terms of like the national landscape. Like,
Absolutely.
we're super credible right now. We've got, big, and apparently from what I keep hearing is there's maybe 2 or 3 more clubs that are going to be joining the landscape.
I've heard that as well.
It's niche. We're kind of dancing around it because we have our beloved clubs and theaters and venues, but it is going to continue providing opportunities for comics.
Another thing that I don't think I've mentioned before, but I got a new job in the interim. I work at the Paramount Theater now.
Oh,
yeah,
fancy.
Thank you. I was part-time box office for like 4 months, and then I've recently been promoted to. So now I'm a show manager is the name of my title, and I'm full-time. So you know what that means? I'm 25. I got health insurance. Hey. I'm very excited about that. Working at the Paramount Theater is incredible. And just this past week, Dimitri Martin played yesterday.
Gosh.
He's playing tonight again. He's been playing for the past 3 days, and they're filming all of the sets. And not yesterday, but the day before yesterday at work, Jimmy O Yang was filming his Netflix special.
Yeah.
And so the Paramount was completely filled with cameras and lights and sounds and like tons of comedians. And I shouldn't say this, but I know a good amount of information about this upcoming Moon Tower, and it's exciting.
Oh,
It's so
I can't
exciting.
wait.
It's so exciting. This spring, keep your eyes open for Moon Tower because we got a lot of stuff cooking up at the Paramount State Theaters.
Oh, that's exciting. So you get to also kind of be involved in some of the Moon Tower planning and all that incredible logistics.
I'm super excited about it.
I have to say, and you can feed this on up chain,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I am very excited about the change that they're making to the schedule because
Oh, yes.
as a comedy fan who wants to be as involved in Moon Tower as possible, this year was exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
Two
Yeah.
weekends in a row of club shows.
Yep.
And that didn't even involve, I think there was only one like high level show that I attended, and that was the Fly on the Wall podcast, which was at Long Center. It wasn't even at Paramount. But it was exhausting. So I'm glad
Yeah.
they're kind of shifting so the club stuff is all going to be on one weekend.
Absolutely.
And that way you can kind of enjoy the really big shows for the 2 week
Absolutely. And
period.
it's also going to be easier from a logistics standpoint at the Paramount because last year in 2021, they had a weird situation where they, in the beginning of the year, did like a makeup Moon Tower for 2020. They were like, well, we couldn't do stuff in 2020, but here's another Moon Tower. And then later did an official Moon Tower.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the logistics of planning 2 separate Moon Towers in 1 year is
Yeah.
Doing one is a lot of work. I mean, it's always a lot of work to run a theater, but like Moon Tower specifically is reaching out to multiple separate venues that are not the Paramount and getting them to do stuff, and then having staff, having volunteers, having everybody be able to run it, and doing 2 of those in 1 year is just, it's chaos. It's havoc. So 2023, it's going to be the first normal year, so I'm super excited for Moon Tower, and I love working at the Paramount. It's crazy to go to work at like such an incredibly beautiful, fancy theater.
Yeah. It's so cool. You specifically, because you have such a love in your heart for Fallout, small black box theater, and now you're also working at, big fancy pants theater with so much history and such incredible programming.
Yeah.
It's
the best. I mean, my jacket has a bunch of Fallout pins on it. Very often I will have people come up to a show, like literally yesterday for the Dimitri Martin show. It was all sold out, right? The tickets are already bought. They're already completely purchased. There's not a single seat in the house that's available. And so people would show up and they would be like, hey, come on, can I come to the show? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, the show is sold out. But if you go 1 block that way and then 1 block to your left, the Fallout Theater has shows 8 p.m., 9:30. And so any chance I get to a disappointed fan coming to see a show at the Paramount and they can't get a ticket, I will literally always recommend that they go to the Fallout Theater, and I give them the little pitch. It's a little nuclear bunker and stuff. And so I cannot tell you how many British tourists I have sent 2 Fallouts away since working at Paramount.
You're such a great ambassador.
Thank you.
Before we start wrapping up, I do want to give you a shout out also for, I love that you have been with your significant other for so many years. It is such a sweet little love story.
Thank you. So I love it too. I love it too.
I just wanted to, it has nothing to do with comedy, but
sure.
I've seen her at shows when I ran a show back in the day, and she'd come along.
Her name's Bree Matherly. She's the best. Love of my life. Live with her now. It's just, now we live in a 1-bedroom in Austin, and it's just me, her, and that little cat that I was talking about earlier. So she's the best. She rules.
That's so awesome. And she supports you being gone on Tuesday nights for your theater. Okay. Garrett, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want us to know about you, update us on?
I guess no. I mean, the simple pitch, like I said, is just literally, because also a big part of the reason why I did the Mr. Tuesdays thing is because it's difficult to tell people your schedule if it relies on numbers. You know what I mean? So like if you do a show every Monday, everybody's going to know I can just set my schedule aside, come to the show on a Monday.
Yep.
But Explorophoria for like years was, okay, so it's the first Tuesday at 9:30, and then it's the third Tuesday at 9:30. So it's every other Tuesday, but not the second Tuesday or the fourth Tuesday. And that's just like nothing. That's static to people. People are just like, oh yeah, okay. So we did not have a lot of repeat customers because I would end the shows and I'd be like, okay, don't come here next week, but the week after, you got to remember, same time, 9:30, third Tuesday. And so the big part of the reason I even did this is to make it easy, right? So now I'm just like, every single Tuesday at 9:30, I'm going to be doing something. Maybe it's going to be comedy PowerPoints. Maybe it's going to be treadmill. Maybe it's going to be, variety Muppet show kind of thing. But like literally always something. So yeah, that's the main pitch. But then obviously the reason I came here to talk is specifically about Fallout. I should probably send people to a specific email address if they're interested.
Yeah,
so,
probably.
Oh, give me a second. I shouldn't send my personal email address because that would probably be an issue for logistics.
Yeah.
But like I said, for Fallout Theater, we are opening up a podcast recording studio, basically. I have no service on my phone. You know what? We'll do my personal email. Sure. Okay. So if anybody listening to this, say you're a comedian, say you're a civilian, right? So you have a podcast you want to do. Maybe it's an idea. Maybe you've never done a podcast before, or maybe you've been doing a podcast for years and years. Any person that wants to record their voice on microphones.
Before you say your personal email address, I mean, could they write Fallout's general email and contact?
Yes, they could.
They could?
They
Okay.
could.
All right.
They absolutely can.
Okay.
You could totally reach out to Fallout. I got spam filters. I'll be fine.
All
I'll be
right,
fine.
go for it.
If you want to record a podcast, comedy or otherwise, you don't even have to be a comedy podcast is another thing. If you have a drama podcast, any kind of podcast you'd like to do, the Fallout Theater has a room called the Dank Room. Simply reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, might be dead, MIGHTBEDEAD at gmail.com. Garrett might be dead at gmail.com. There's 2 R's, 2 T's in Garrett. This might be a huge mistake, but simply reach out to my email and we will look at the schedule. We'll look at the schedule. We'll find a time to get you into the podcast studio to record. Like I said, since we want this to be a free asset to the community, 2 things that we're working on. The first thing, the large thing that I still don't exactly have the logistics down yet, is setting up a Zoom link, right? Say people don't want to drive all the way out to Austin, don't want to come to the Fallout Theater. If you have somebody running the soundboards and a person people in person recording on a microphone, we're also going to have it set up so that you can have people come in from Zoom and still record the podcast via Zoom link. So working on that logistically. But like I said, reach out at garrettmightbedead@gmail.com and
Don't say it too often, because if I have to sound edit it out.
it's gonna be so many bleeps. I understand that.
Because by the time your episode comes out, you'll have
We'll
the
have a
email.
different email. You're so
we'll
right.
Write
You're
it,
so right.
And I can do the dubbing. I can maybe have my teenage son just say
That's
it
so
over.
funny.
And that would make it
That would be
really
very
funny.
good. Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's great. And forget everything I said about garrettmightbedead@gmail.com.
Stop saying it.
And so like I said, to keep it free to people, if you would like a sound tech, somebody that knows how to run soundboards, knows how to do mic volume and stuff like that to record, then it's going to be $25 for 1 hour, and that pay will go directly to the person, for the person to drive out there and come and do the tech. But if you're like, hey man, I want to do it for free, just reach out to Fallout, reach out to me. We will set up a day where I can teach you, or a tech can teach you how to run the soundboards. And so then all you have to do is book the time on the schedule, write your name on a little, clipboard, basically saying that you came in at this specific time. We'll give you the code to the lockbox, and you can set up the microphones yourself if you'd like.
Awesome.
So yeah, the Fallout podcast room is the main thing I want to get the word out on.
Very good. All right. Well, Garrett, we have reached that point in the talk where... Shall we revisit what your future word was back in 2019?
Oh, I don't remember whatsoever.
It was meaty.
Meaty. That's pretty good. Man, I have such a way with I must have been hungry every time I've ever come to this podcast. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
One word to describe your future.
One word to describe my future. I want to say, because this is aspirational, right? This is what I would like the future to be. I would say focused.
Ooh.
Focused. I have a quality of kind of putting a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that can kind of bring my energy levels down because I'm like burning the candle at both ends. So focused. I want to focus on a specific thing, maybe 2 or 3 things, but like a focused future.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. And not food related.
If I had to do one that was food related, I can't even think of a word.
Shocked.
That's the new me.
Well, we'll see if you get away completely from food when you revisit us the third time. All right. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham presents Garrett Buss. Garrett, tell us where we can find you on social media, and if your chance now to plug your things again.
Certainly. You can find everything that I do at garrettbuss.com. It is GarrettBuss.com.
Lots of doubles.
Lots of doubles. I got 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 S's. Yeah, so that tells you everything. That tells you what shows I'm doing and like the different stuff that I've been. I've also been in a movie. I've been in a couple of movies. An extra. I'm not Mr. Shining Star, but I was in a Richard Linklater movie called Apollo 10.5, where I played a hippie with long hair that gets like a conversation about whether or not he classifies as a hippie because he's wearing bell bottoms, but his hair isn't necessarily the exact length of being hippie. So,
oh my God.
If you ever see Apollo 10.5 on Netflix and you see a hippie, it's me. I don't know why I brought this up.
Now we're going to look.
Yeah.
Watch and see if we
so
can
yeah,
spot.
if you go to garrettbuss.com, that's got pretty much everything that I do.
But you said movies plural. What's
the other one? It's technically I've been in. I'm not trying to brag. 3 movies.
Please
right?
brag.
So the other 2 aren't nearly as exciting. The second one is called Look Both Ways, and it is a rom-com that's been on Netflix. And once again, I am in 2 separate scenes. In one scene, I am a college party goer, and so I have a red solo cup. Me and this other guy, Sam Pierce, we're just dancing around, having a good time, being silly boys. And then later on, I am a movie goer at the Paramount Theater. This is actually months before I worked at the Paramount Theater, but I'm an extra in that scene as well, and I'm just walking around in the background of the Paramount, hanging out. I'm behind the main star. She's in Riverdale. I can't remember her name. She has blonde hair. Nah, it doesn't matter. So Look Both Ways. I'm briefly in it. You can see my little face. Apollo 10.5. I'm in it, and my face is... Also, I should mention, Apollo 10.5 is rotoscoped. So I'm an animation. I'm not...
Oh.
It's like they took the visual footage and they turned it into a cartoon. And then the third movie has not come out yet, but I believe it's going to be called Rearview Mirrors. And I am a off-work factory worker wearing a jumpsuit, chugging root beers at a bar. So...
Wow. Oh, I feel like we could add another half hour talking about acting. Is that, something that you
I like to act. I like to act, but it's okay. Comedy's my main focus,
Focus, but I'm going to do acting on the side.
Exactly.
Make that Netflix money.
Got to get that sweet Netflix residuals. They give extras so much money in the film industry.
I bet. Do you even get to go to the sandwich table?
To the sandwich? Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I went to craft
good.
services and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Garrett got to be the comedic, noodly, focused genius that you are today, just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham presents Garrett Buss. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Garrett.
Anytime. Thank you.